Thank you for joining us. This is an exciting topic, and I know we've had really good turnout and registration for this webinar. We have, as our team, as well as other teams within Everest Group, have done many briefings and quite a bit of research on generative AI as it's progressed over the last, years, but several months as well this year. And excited to cover this today. So we're going to have three main sections of this webinar. We'll talk about navigating the generative AI landscape, some of the evolution, give you a base in the broader Gen AI use cases and implementation and how it may be applied across the enterprise value chain. And then we'll talk about the current state of AI usage within the procurement space and the function, as well as applications of Gen AI within source-to-pay processes. So please stick around, and we welcome you to ask questions as we go. We'll answer those in the Q&A or verbally at the end, or we may even touch on them as they come up. So let me jump right now into a background of the evolution of generative AI and AI in general. So we all have some base and facts of where we're coming from here. These are just a scale of cognitive technologies and the impact that they can have on business. And many of you may have seen this before. We've started, it kind of starts with rule-based systems, and then they're using predetermined rules and reasoning to make decisions, and they're not capable of learning or adapting. They're fairly fixed. We move on to machine learning, where we have algorithms and statistical models that help a computer learn from past data, and it can get better over time. So you've seen machine learning embedded into a lot of processes for a long time. Currently, you see more and more adoption of that, as well as deep learning, where neural networks with more layers are drawing out more significant models and correlations and can handle mass volumes of data. They have really enabled a lot of the strides in things like image recognition and natural language processing and speech recognition. And then generative AI, and the differentiator there is that it's creating new material like photos or writing or music or simulations using those previous models and algorithms and building on them. What we're not quite seeing yet is explainable AI, which provides a clear and comprehensible justification for the decisions and its behaviors. This is, as you can imagine, a level of AI that'll help instill some confidence and help to adhere to ethical and legal standards, and that's still in development right now, or being developed. But when we look at generative AI, it doesn't have those attributes. And that is probably one of the concerns that people have around AI, among many others. We're going to focus today on what it can do for the most part, and we'll touch a little bit on some of those points. The evolution of generative AI actually started a long time ago, and I think most of us in the public sphere have become aware of it more recently. But when you go all the way back to 1966, the first chatbot, Eliza, was created, and there was some image recognition, and Siri was launched around 2014, and then there's the next horizon, the building of ChatGPT and large language model conceptualization and text to image. And then finally in 2023, late 2022, was when we started to see ChatGPT integrated into Bing, Google adding Gen AI to some of their core applications, launch of GPT-4, and others announcing Gen AI expansion that made it much more of a consumer accessible product and available for I'll say non-IT people. So the other pieces that you've seen accelerate this, other than those launches and some of the reasons behind it, is just faster computation power, more mature models that could process more parameters, and then higher quality large training data that drove some of these tools. So there are a lot of things that kind of came together to lead to Gen AI being highly visible and progressing very quickly over the last year. And even when we look at studies or priorities from 6 months or a year ago, it wasn't even on the list. Now it's now it's quite significant in the talk of nearly every discussion that I get involved in. So I want to understand the audience and where you're coming from. How significant is generative AI to your organization right now, or sorry, specifically to your procurement team? If you're on the buy side, if you're not on the buy side, looking specifically within procurement. The first option is that it's very central emphasis. It's one of the highest priorities for your investment or your tech investment in the next year. Second option is that it's a critical priority and you already have resources exploring it. Third is you're interested, but you're not quite identifying use cases, kind of the observe and learn mode. And then the last is that it's just not a priority for you at all, not investing, not really paying attention, wait for the market and see where it goes. And I think if you're in the, this is just a phase, this is a bandwagon thing, you're probably in that last group as well. So let's give a few more. I see a lot of responses still coming in, so we'll give a little bit more time. Interesting to see how this splits out, especially as we're in December 2023 now when we're airing this, and we're all thinking about priorities and investments for 2024. So I'm sure this is top of mind for many people. All right, and I think the results are up there. So we saw that for there's only 5% of you that are not considering this priority, 10% that this is the top priority, and everybody else kind of in between. Almost 40% say this is a critical priority, and 52% said we're interested but haven't really identified the use cases. And hopefully that's why you're here today, is start getting some of those ideas. So this is super interesting to see. As I said, I think if we looked at this even 6 months ago, many more of you would be in that third bucket than that second bucket. So really happy to see how many people are prioritizing this. I think there's so much potential in procurement that you should be, if you're not in the number 2 group or 1, you should at least be in number 3. It's not something that you can completely ignore because it's getting integrated into all of the tools that you use, and it's certainly going to change the way we do our jobs as procurement experts and the way that our stakeholders do theirs across the company. All right, sorry, I have a bit of a lag here in jumping to the next slide. Okay, so there we go. So let's talk about some of the broader Gen AI use cases, and then we'll jump into some of the applications. So first of all, I want to make sure that we all understand that we've been really focused on large language models. Things like ChatGPT have gotten a lot of attention, and for good reason, but there's also other types of products and platforms that generative AI can be applied to. These are some of the logos on the right for different types of generation. So text generation, there's image generation, audio, video, synthetic data, and then code. And so depending on what you're doing in an organization, your interest in these may be a little bit different. Coders may be looking at generating code. Probably most of us in the sourcing space are looking at things like text and image and possibly synthetic data, or using this to accelerate some of the existing data sets that we have out there. Use cases for AI are also.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
Just
Benisha. Let you comment on that.
Yeah, just adding on to this part, right? We've been also researching a little bit into the gaming and animation and architectural type of industries, and they have seen a lot of growth in 3D model generation, which I think is pretty cool, right? Because we're talking about texture synthesis through Gen AI, or we're talking about, say, 3D model creation on those type of things. So it's actually advanced even post video generation when it comes to those industries to enter more 3D or 4D types of arenas. So there is no actual end game to this as to the applications depending on the modality when it comes to Gen AI.
Yeah, that's a great
Go ahead,
point.
Amy. Sorry.
No, that's great. It's a great point, and definitely worth making before we move on to some of the evolving use cases. So we mainly saw Gen AI First applied in tactical work, and as we see it maturing, the application and the confidence has increased, and we've seen moving on to more business process and industry specific work. So starting with things like content creation and personalization, moving on to things like customer experience management and customer service, and there's quite a few applications in there, as we'll see in a moment, in that process. And then moving on to industry specific work as well, around things like pharma GPT or legal GPT. So there's really no area that's not being affected or impacted here. Banushi, let me hand it over to you. Why don't you tell us a bit more about how Gen AI is being adopted across the value chain?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So when it comes to the entire enterprise value chain, right, we tried to map it across potential of Gen AI adoption and the ease of adoption. So if you see this particular chart, you'll see various enterprise functions such as customer experience management, trust and safety, marketing services, which are in the accelerate quadrant, which means that they have high potential and high ease of adoption, versus something like cybersecurity or financial crime compliance, which we've seen in the wait phase, that people are maybe still in that exploration phase when it comes to Gen AI adoption. So if we just look at the top categories and how it influences you as maybe procurement stakeholders, right? The first thing is that you need to have the market intelligence with you related to which business functions are facing those high adoptions, so that you can help them in those particular categories. So you would know that, okay, your marketing business unit probably would be needing more support from you as procurement when it comes to Gen AI adoption. Sorry, I think we just jumped a couple of slides. We need to move back to that slide. So when it comes to, Gen AI adoption, these are the categories that would have the highest sort of business need from procurement. And the other thing is, of course, there is a certain level of market intelligence that the procurement team needs to have as a whole. So when it comes to customer experience management, for instance, we recently did a peak matrix assessment on conversational AI platforms, right? So platforms such as there would be Amelia or Aravo, and just throwing out examples over there, right? They're actually helping agents when it comes to generating assistive type of capabilities, or even in customer journey mapping, which is sort of a more strategic part of customer experience management. When you look at the marketing services categories, Gen AI is helping with lead generation, right? So there are a lot of use cases across all of these areas. And of course, if you look at the top categories, you would see they have a more interactive element to them, right? Customer experience is all about agent assistance. Marketing services is all about, interacting with customers and making that experience wholesome. So these are the categories that typically we've seen have high adoption and ease of, potential of adoption. But when it comes to something like procurement, which you would see is in the educate quadrant, it's kind of going at a slower pace. And we have a lot of content in this deck to talk about where it is and why that is happening. So I won't delve into that into this particular slide. But when it comes to procurement in general, we would see that adoption of technology has been slow when you compare it to its counterparts in maybe the F&A or the HR and talent segment as a whole. But let's get into that in the next couple of slides. What we do want to cover now going forward in this particular section is deep diving into the procurement department, right? And we would start and focus on AI. So this is not just about Gen AI, but the overall AI ML technology adoption within procurement. And we would talk about, the adoption of traditional versus advanced technologies. And we would sort of focus on maybe case studies and examples across the source to pay value chain. So what are the top use cases in procurement, how enterprises are using AI in procurement, and then we would bring focus back on Gen AI and how Gen AI is going to lead that adoption. All right. So with that, coming to procurement, right? What we have seen with procurement traditionally is that there's been a lot of disparate systems across the organization, unstructured data, and of course, lack of clarity on the ROI of investing into technology, which has been a key barrier for procurement to keep investing in tech and upping its game in that sense, right? So what has been happening, if you see on the left side of this page, traditional technologies, basic analytics, RPA, basic chatbots, they've still seen sort of a high adoption. And there is a potential for high adoption as well. So there is an expected 2023 to 25. That is also high when it goes forward for these particular technologies. But when you look at the right side, you will see that the AI ML based technologies or the cognitive technologies generally have a lower estimate of adoption. And with GenAI, that is sort of increasing. So GenAI has seen a lot of interest within the procurement department as well across S2P use cases. In fact, I think Amy pointed out that we've been doing a lot of sessions with our clients or our sourcing audience, and we have been hearing a lot of examples of how these particular tools are being sort of piloted within the procurement department, especially when it comes to transaction-focused use cases, right? So when it comes to something like IDP, for instance, it is being used more and more for extracting your relevant information from unstructured data. Similar is happening with advanced analytics solutions. Procurement is adopting it more and more. And the reason for that is mainly that twofold, right? So one is that you want to reduce your sourcing turnaround time. And the other is, of course, that you want to focus more on the judgment intensive tasks. So you want to reduce that manual effort on transactional activities and increase the judgment focused tasks. And something like IDP or something like GenAI, which is giving you those standard, responses which help you get a head start, actually help you save a lot of that time. So that is what has been happening with procurement. And if we now move to this particular slide, I'll hand it back to Amy because we want to again test from the audience. What is the potential that you see for source to pay technologies when it comes to AI ML?
Thanks, Manushi. So please respond here. Would love to see all of these that apply. All these where you see potential: spend analytics and insights, category management and sourcing, contract management, supplier management, and rec and PO processing, and then of course accounts payable, which may report to the CPO, but maybe finance. Some of the P2P processes could go either way in terms of functional, but interested to see what everyone thinks of in terms of source to pay. We're getting great responses in these polls, so appreciate everyone sharing your thoughts.
Spend analytics and insights is the top response till now. You have around 80% of people who see the impact of AI ML in it. Right.
And I guess it is very similar to what we saw in our previous survey as well with various procurement professionals. A lot of them were leaning towards spend analytics and contract management, something similar that we are seeing here.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Great. And I'm going to take a look at these results again. Spend analytics, the top, and then followed very closely, close tie between contract management, rec and PO processing, category management, and sourcing behind that, supplier relationship management, and accounts payable. So this is all, almost everything's over, 50%. I think supplier relationship management is a little bit lower there. I'm not surprised to see that. There's certainly a lot that can be done, but when we have the word relationship, people tend to not think automation. So it makes sense.
Agreed.
All right, I'm going to turn it back and we'll keep talking through, Banushi, keep talking through what you see in the value chain.
Yeah. So when we come to the insights that we've actually gotten within our survey, as Amit pointed out, it's been around the use cases or the top use cases that we've also been seeing across the board, right? So if we have to sort of pinpoint, okay, that these are the 5 or 6 areas that we've been seeing top adoption in, then of course spend analytics totally aligned on that, contract management totally aligned on that. But what exactly within these particular areas are we seeing adoption in? So the first one would be document creation, right? So RFXs, creating your POs or PRs as well. All of these type of use cases are seeing very high adoption, and there are very specific providers that actually help with such use cases as well, right? So that is number one. The second thing that we are seeing a lot of adoption with is, there there's a lot of spend analytics and insights. So that is definitely one of them. So you would probably, just say that, oh, okay, look at this particular subcategory. Tell me what are the top subcategories with the top spend, or top suppliers with the spend, or, just to pull together some basic analytics and even visuals out of that. So more of graph generation in terms of insights that is used for GenAI, where AI capabilities are used a lot. The third one would be supplier identification. That is also a very, very important one. And we have been seeing, in fact, we've seen a lot of providers that have been integrating this particular capability into their solutions. So that is, again, the third use case. And we would also see some amount of, I would say, automated negotiations, not too much of it, but it is sort of rising up, with certain providers in the market, such as Pactum, that is offering capabilities when it comes to AI adoption within that. Great. Of course, if we have to, think about it in terms of the P2P process as well, there's a certain amount of guided buying assistance that GenAI or AI capabilities are able to add to, right? So that is also another very big use cases when, again, we move from the strategic part to the P2P part of the value chain. So when it comes to S2P, these were the top sort of use cases. And now what we wanted to do was give you examples within these particular use cases. So the first one being BT, which is actually using Globality, and their AI-powered smart sourcing platform to source suppliers. So BT already has its internal procurement system. It's called BT Sourced, and they've built all these procurement S2P capabilities in-house. But they're also using Globality to as a best-of-breed solution to add on the smart sourcing capabilities. So they are using it for supplier identification to sort of ease out the sourcing process. And Globality has actually integrated, the smart assistant chatbot to actually answer your queries and speed up that process so that you focus more on judgment-intensive tasks. Similarly, if you look at the example of BP, now they're using it a lot for RFX processes. In this case, they've partnered with Fair Market to automate their manual sourcing process. And going on, we have a few more examples, right? So for contract management, we have Mercedes. They're using iSortus's contract intelligence tool to sort of reduce the turnaround time, create a centralized repository. And then we have Walmart, which is using Search.io and their guided category strategy creation to increase, productivity in developing their category strategies as a whole. So moving from, small activities to larger activities, there are a lot of processes that enterprises have started implementing GenAI or AI capabilities as a whole when it comes to adoption. Summarizing all of this, right, and moving from AI at a broader level to GenAI, if we look at the adoption trends within the S2P value chain, we have there are a couple of things that are propelling the demand for GenAI, particularly in procurement. The first one being stakeholder experience, not just for the suppliers, but also for the internal business users. So there are a lot of GenAI chatbots that are being integrated with internal and external stakeholders to ease out this entire communication process. The next one being, of course, content creation. So there's a lot of, RFX creation, contract drafting, and PO creation that we've seen happening in the market. And the third one, of course, being insight generation, which you all also agree to because there's a lot of response on spend analytics and insights generation. So that is another avenue where procurement is seeing a lot of potential for GenAI adoption. With that, I will hand over to Amit because he is going to actually talk about GenAI, and he mentioned a survey that we have done with a lot of procurement professionals and CPOs and leaders in the industry. So we'll be sharing a little bit from what we've heard from the industry and what we've heard from you as to how GenAI can be applied within source to pay.
Thank you, Vanushi. We have gotten a good understanding of how GenAI has evolved, and then we discussed a bit about what is the current state of AI in procurement, right? Now we will specifically focus on how GenAI can enhance the traditional AI capabilities, and then we will also discuss what are the various use cases that we are seeing across the source to pay value chain for GenAI currently in the market, and followed by what could be the impediments for GenAI's adoption in procurement. So we'll quickly move to the next. Okay. Now, talking about, so we mentioned how traditional AI is currently being used in source to pay value chain, right? And we also discussed the various aspects or various dimensions along which Gen AI can help. So the dimensions, to summarize again, would be your insight generation, your content generation, and also your interactive engagements that can be enabled with the help of generative AI. Now, across these four aspects, which is analytics, process automation, virtual assistants, and IDP. So these four aspects are something which we are considering to define how Gen AI can create a differentiator as opposed to traditional AI for your procurement processes. So starting off with, let's say we're talking about analytics. Now, in case of your traditional AI tools, the hindrance was that it was limited by its ability to just focus on historical data sets. What generative AI brings to the table is that it can go beyond your historical data, which is by creating synthetic data. So let's say you have your training data that you are feeding into the generative AI model. It can take that and create a synthetic data on which you can do various iterations of how you want to go ahead with the implementation and get an optimum way of implementing it. Now, that way, analytics will be enhanced with the use of generative AI. I guess we skipped a few slides. Okay. Talking about process automation, then in process automation, you can consider various aspects in which traditional AI was already being used. Like, let's say you had your sourcing, where best fit suppliers could be found with the help of traditional AI, or you are getting marketplace recommendations. Now, that is where process automation was good. I mean, traditionally I was good for it, but given that it is only working on a rules-based approach, the limitation here is that it cannot adapt to the variations which you are getting in the input. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say we are talking about a particular use case of conflict resolution in vendor management. Now, how do you like, there can be various ways in which the conflicts can arise with your vendor. But traditionally, I will only offer you solutions that it has seen from the past data. But what generative AI can do is, along with that historical data analysis, it will also bring up creative solutions to how you can go about resolving these conflicts. And similarly with other aspects like virtual assistants, you have your robotic process automation, which has been used for some time now in procurement. But those bots can only answer certain generic queries. But generative AI can go a step ahead and enhance that. So all in all, what we're trying to convey here is that along with whatever good that traditional AI has done for procurement technology so far, generative AI will only help and push the envelope more for digitalization of procurement. Moving on to the next slide, so we have already discussed what are the use cases we are seeing for traditional AI for the source to pay value chain, but these are specific generative AI use cases for each and every domain in source to pay value chain. So let's say we start with spend analytics. Now, what generative AI can do for spend analytics is it can create customized and contextualized spend data. What we mean by that is it can go through all the colossal data sets that we have, which are very much unstructured. And that is one of the major problems for procurement, right? Generative AI can come in here and solve that problem. It can help you structure that data and then go ahead and, create, you tag the spend to various categories. Now, that will also involve some kind of inputs from obviously your existing data set and also the organization priorities. So that will help that will help spend analytics become better, and we can have more spend visibility, and also better insight into what is the category which is, let's say, a priority for you or not on the basis of the spend. So this is one of the things which we also came across in the previous poll, right? That most of you were leaning towards spend analytics as one of the major areas where GenAI can be implemented. And something similar also came up in our survey which we did a few months back. Now, why we believe it is the case is that the three dimensions along which we are seeing generative AI analysis, your insight generation, and your interactive engagement, the generative AI is helping you out with identifying patterns, going ahead of your data sets and helping you create those solutions. And hence, spend analytics might be something which is on everyone's radar. And also followed by something like sourcing. So various autonomous sourcing tools like Globality, Keelvar, Fair Market, etc. They have already integrated generative AI capabilities, whether it be ChatGPT or their own LLMs. Via that, they are helping out with creating tailored RFPs and also providing analysis, RFP analysis for the procurement professionals. Now, one other thing in which generative AI is helping out in sourcing is that you can automate the sourcing event generation. Now, why that is helpful for any procurement professional is that your tactical activities and your tail spend activities are something which take up a lot of time of a procurement professional, and hence it hinders your productivity, right? So using these kind of tools like your autonomous sourcing tools will help procurement professionals to increase their productivity, and also having a razor sharp focus only on the strategic activities where they can create your market, they can create your category strategies, then having a proper sourcing strategy in place and all those things. Then we can move on to the negotiations domain. Now, in negotiations, the use case that we are seeing for GenAI is not just about automating negotiations, but also providing a negotiation coach for the procurement professionals. Now, what we mean by that is there are certain bots which these tools are coming out with. Like, let's say Globality has a bot called Glow. What this Glow bot does is it provides you assistance for coaching, provides you assistance for negotiation. How it does that is, first, it can create a scenario of negotiation with you. Like, let's say you are acting as the procurement professional, and the bot will act as a vendor. Now you can start having the you can start having the conversation with the bot, and the bot will customize the conversation on the basis of your previous interactions with that supplier and also your organization's priorities. And in that way, it will provide you various options of how you should go ahead and optimize the value that you are bringing out of that negotiation. So these are a few ways in which generative AI will enhance the value of all the domains in source to pay value chain.
Yeah, and it just if you think about it, we wanted to give you some questions that you can ask. Let's say if you're going through the sourcing life cycle, then you can ask probably the bot that, hey, can you just compare these 4 proposals and give me a response? So you would have a head start in that case, right? So this is a very casual question. You can also ask something which is more, internal procurement policy oriented, which can be around, okay, if I have to integrate a non-preferred vendor into one particular category, then what would the process be? How much time would it take? So if the bot already has that procurement information fed into the system, then it would tell you that, okay, the TPRM process would take X amount of time, and your total time would increase by, let's say, 8 weeks or so. So it just helps you get to those answers a lot quicker, and that reduces your overall analysis time.
Yeah. That's correct, Manish. And along with that, also, if you look at the downstream procurement, which is your procure to pay, right? So a lot of organizations that we are speaking to, they have been mentioning that they just want to uh, automate the processes on the downstream side, because then it will free up their procurement professionals' time, right? So if you look at something like a PR creation or automating the PO cycle, then that is where we are seeing multiple solutions coming up with integration of Gen AI and enhancing the effectiveness of your uh, procure to pay process by streamlining it and uh, making it more efficient for your organization. I'll quickly move to the next slide. Yes. So we spoke about all the use cases, right, across the various domains at a high level. Now, in this particular slide, the framework that you see in front of you, it gives you an idea of what are the use cases that uh, can be focused right now to pilot in, and what could be the various use cases that you might want to deprioritize. So on the x-axis, you will see the adoption potential, which is mapped for all these various activities. And on the y-axis, you will see the impact which generative AI will have for all these activities. And so let's say you're taking customized document creation, which is in your accelerate bucket. Now, we spoke about how your statement of work or your PRPO, RFPs, etc., can be automated with the help of generative AI, right? Now, the placement here is very much conducive for document creation because the adoption potential is high, along with the impact which generative AI can create being in a very suitable position, right? Now, why we say that the adoption potential for generative AI is high for document creation is that given that its business criticality is a bit low, as in you can have your human intervention just to review the document once it is created by the system. So that is where the business criticality is low, and it offers a lot of space to start off by creating a pilot use case for document creation and seeing how it goes by experimenting and knowing that, let's say, you implemented and then you were able to see increase in productivity or any other parameter that is important for your organization, then you can just go ahead and replicate that for other use cases. Like, let's say, if you are going for guided buying support or supplier onboarding, which are very Gen AI augmented use cases, right? But having a customized document creation is something which can be one of the pilot use cases for any procurement organization that is trying to have a foray in the Gen AI space. Then an activity like negotiation support, which we have currently put in the opportunistic bucket. The reason why we have it there is that although we foresee a lot of impact being created by Gen AI for this activity, but the adoption potential is a bit low given the complexity of the process, right? Because it is one thing to just be a negotiation coach and provide that kind of support to the procurement professional, but then it is another thing to completely go ahead and negotiate on the behalf of the organization, right? Because that can create a lot of issues which can be related to your legal issues, your relationship with that supplier, and other things. But we do see a few organizations, like we'll show you the use cases going ahead. But one thing which I would like to mention for negotiation is that Pactum, in partnership with Walmart, has already done something for us. So on the negotiation side, they have automated the negotiations for the tail spend activities, and they have seen good results in there. And it might also lead to them trying it out for their strategic spend as well. But currently we can only foresee its usage as a negotiation coach to create various options and scenarios for the procurement professional, just kind of providing a support. And something like supply relationship. Well, across all the activities which we see in supplier management, like let's say your supplier onboarding, then supplier base insights, supplier identification, although we have placed them in accelerate bucket, but something like optimizing supplier relationship, we have placed in the deprioritize bucket, because similar problem to negotiation support is that the adoption potential is low given the complexity of the process. I'll quickly move to the next slide. Yes. So we mentioned that we want to give you an insight into what are the various technology providers who have already integrated generative AI capabilities in their tool. So what we have done is across the 3 dimensions which we have been talking about throughout our session today, which is text generation, insight generation, and interactive engagement. We have mapped a few of the technology providers who are already using GenAI, and they have these solutions in place. So for text generation, one of the examples that I've already given you is Globality, but apart from that, there are others, like there is Keelvar, you have your Orchestro, who are autonomous sourcing tools, and they are helping you out with creating RFPs, analyzing them, or creating your statement of works. And also in insight generation, one of the examples can be contract analysis or spend analysis, where for contract analysis, one of the tech providers we see in the market is Search.io, or for category management, we are seeing Search.io, and for contract management, we have someone like Ironclad, who are already using generative AI capabilities, and they are enhancing the support that they can provide to their clients via GenAI. And also on the interactive engagement side of things, whether it be cross-functional collaboration or negotiation support, as we spoke before, there are a few providers like you have Bureau, Pactum, etc., who are doing some work in this field currently. I'll move to the next slide and hand it over to Amy.
All right, so I'll quickly, we have another poll, right? We want to hear from the audience again. So we want to understand what the main challenges are that you anticipate in implementing GenAI in the source to pay activities. Okay, so a lot of responses already coming in. Lack of understanding or awareness of GenAI, data input and availability, cost and budget concerns, data security, privacy, which I see is actually gaining a lot of prevalence over here. And the last one being accuracy of GenAI responses, right? Which I think also links to the hallucinations that we all have been worrying about a lot. Okay, we'll give it another minute or so. All right. I think we can share the results now. So 62% of you say that data security and privacy is the key concern, followed by the accuracy, which is standing at, it's followed by data input quality and availability, which is at 55%, and then the accuracy of GenAI responses. So 50% have been finding that a key challenge. All right. I see that cost and budget concerns is actually at the lower end in this particular stage, which is a little surprising for us, because the cost of GenAI and actually getting the ROI out of it, especially within procurement function, is something that we have been hearing as a very big challenge when we've been talking to our clients and sourcing executives. Considering that the infrastructure and the platforms actually have a very high cost when it comes to implementation. But again, it depends on whether you have in-house tools or best-of-breed solutions that you're partnering with, and that way the cost can be optimized. But data security and privacy, definitely agree 100% that it is a key concern. In fact, I think there was a survey that we had run recently, and around 10% of enterprises said that they've actually just banned the use of GenAI within the organization because they see a lot of concerns when it comes to privacy and security. So very well aligned on that particular aspect. Amit, do you want to share a little bit more into the specific areas within these that have been creating an impact?
Yeah, definitely, Manushi. We can move on to the next slide, and I'll discuss a a bit about each of these risks that we are seeing. Yeah. So how we are looking at the risk that GenAI poses to organizations is that data security and privacy definitely one of the major risk components associated with GenAI, followed by explainability, which is your hallucinations or whether you can rely on the data that is the output of these GenAI tools. Followed by ownership and responsibility, and also your biases, which can be inherent in the data, and just GenAI picks on that and gives out output accordingly. So let's say, so starting off with data security and privacy, right? What we see currently is that how GenAI can pose a threat is for the impact magnitude. Definitely you have your financial loss, which is at stake, your reputation, which is also at stake, which given, let's say, there is some leak in data, and private information is being exposed out there. While speaking to all the technology providers who have integrated GenAI, they have put in very strict measures in order to resolve this issue. And again, this is something which needs to be worked out via the partnership between the organization and the tech provider. But definitely all the tech providers are taking into consideration this as one of the major threats to their clients, and they are doubling down on this by putting up strong walls around data. And what they're doing to solve this particular problem is they're not keeping the data with themselves, or they are not using it to train their models. And this is something which they are putting into the contracts beforehand itself, so that they are ensuring that this will not be a problem going ahead. So that is how they are tackling it. What is the stage that we see this problem occurring is during data collection and storage, right? So this is where it needs to be tackled. Speaking about explainability, then we are already aware, like even a few days ago, Satya Nadella also spoke about how hallucinations is one of the major problems for GenAI tools, and they are working very hard to create standards so that it is giving out right responses. But that is something which will be a problem for proprietary models like your ChatGPT or your Bard. But a few of the tech providers, what they are doing is they are going ahead and building LLMs of their own, which are not proprietary. They are very specific to their organizations, and they are training it in such a fashion that it will resolve these issues which are very much important for procurement or any other function. Similarly, the issue of ownership, and lastly, speaking about the biases, which can be a part of the training data sets. So this is where not just your tech provider, but also the organization will have an important role to play, given that cleaning the data and also structuring it in such a manner that they can avoid the biases as much as they can. Moving ahead to the next slide. So we spoke about the risks which are associated with GenAI's implementation, and we'll quickly just talk a bit about what are the challenges apart from the ones which we discussed. So one is, again, lack of proven ROI, which has been a problem for procurement technologies right from the beginning, whether it be your ERFX or your traditional AI tools being used, which will also be a problem for GenAI. But that is something which again will have to be resolved by having various pilots being done, and then purge a few pilots on the basis of your organization's priorities and your procurement team's priorities as well. Followed by, let's say, something like lack of centralized data, lack of specialized talent. This can also be one of the major challenges for GenAI's implementation. And lastly, you have your resistance to change, which is always a problem for digital adoption. These are some things which need to be kept in mind before going ahead with implementation of GenAI. Now I'll hand it over to Bhanushi to discuss a bit about the complementary.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. So again, this is a complimentary offer for all the attendees of our webinar, right? So we want to provide access to our market report on generative AI, and it will actually help. I see that we have a lot of questions down there, and I was reading through them right now, and I know that this report will definitely answer a lot of questions that are there. So it covers aspects around, generative AI and its adoption potential across industries. Just giving you a small hint, it's BFSI is one of the top adopters, despite all the data security and privacy concerns we've been talking about. It also covers aspects such as, what are the platforms, who are the providers out there, what are the infrastructure components, and it is also covering pricing models, which is something that we all need to think about going forward, right? That which, if you want to implement GenAI, what model should you be thinking about, and so on and so forth. So the link has been shared on the chat. Do click on it, and I'm confident that it will help answer a lot of the questions that you would be having about GenAI. All right. So with that, I think we'll just jump to the last slide within this, right? It's actually talking about the cost related to GenAI, which we had been stressing about a little bit earlier in the webinar as well. But if you look at the entire, GenAI integration, we have overall seen that even off-the-shelf GenAI is far too expensive for broad-based applications, at least, at the current price points that are there. So only very select use cases we've seen have been generating meaningful ROI. And generally, that the costs that are involved in GenAI adoption, the highest component is infrastructure. So there's a lot of hardware that goes into it, or there's cloud platforms that are there, and those particular costs are very high. Right? There are certain graphic processing units, there are certain advanced neural network technologies which are actually very cost intensive, and that just adds up to the entire infrastructure cost, along with, of course, training that model according to what your preferences or needs are within an enterprises, which also takes up a lot of cost when it comes to GenAI integration. So I think, and we have a certain, the market is also reacting to that, right? CIOs are saying that it's cost prohibitive to get GenAI, even for no-brainer use cases and all those things. So with that, I think what I'll do is I'll wrap up. We do want to leave some time for your questions. We have a lot of questions, and I would hand it to back to Amy, and she can sort of moderate the questions and help answer. We'll try to answer a lot of them right now, but we don't have so much time.
Amy, you're
Amy,
on mute.
Sorry, I muted it for a second there. Thank you, both of you, for sharing. So we're trying to answer the questions in the chat. We still have 25 open here. So we're clearly not going to get to all of those in the next 6 minutes, and some of them might be a little bit more specific than we can answer off the cuff. I want to encourage everyone to click that link to get that report, because there's that's not a procurement specific report. So for those of you kind of asking about general GenAI questions, I think that's a great report. There's also we're happy to do briefings or have more discussions one-on-one with people. We will share the presentation. You'll get an email within the next day or two that includes the presentation. It also includes that link. So if you were too slow on clicking it, but you should see it in the chat right now. I'm having trouble sorting through the 20 open questions to pick one. Anything, Amit, or Bhanushi, anything that you see that you're interested in addressing here? I think there's go ahead, Bhanushi. I was going to pick one. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think there was a question around, okay, somebody is actually asking you, Amit. So hi, Amit, can you please explain a little bit more and around how GenAI is used for SRM, supplier relationship management? So there are 2 questions around this, actually. Do you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. Yeah. So in supply relationship management, we discussed a few use cases, right? Like you have your joint business planning, or there's supplier conflict resolution. or also supplier innovation. But if you have to, prioritize use cases for supplier relationship management, then definitely something like a supplier onboarding is something which can be looked at as one of the avenues where Gen AI is being used, because that can help you out with, analyzing your current current database of suppliers, or also suppliers, or access the suppliers which are available to you for particular activities. And then you can just go ahead, and once that intake is done, then the onboarding process can also be made smooth with the help of Gen AI. So these are the few use cases for SRM.
Agreed. Yeah. So when it comes to SRM, typically, like we said, it's a more relationship-oriented aspect, right? So onboarding in the beginning is one of them. Then if we look at the overall, risk and performance management process, what we've seen examples of is the internal procurement or the internal integration of policies within these Gen AI tools, right? So people have been using Gen AI to answer basic questions around the TPRM process, how long it would take, or just integrating factors such as, okay, this preferred supplier, is it in this already, in the preferred supplier category or not? Or can you give a list of, suppliers within this? So we haven't seen very big examples, to be honest, and that we haven't seen examples of specific tools being built just for supplier relationship management at this point of time. But there is certainly scope when it comes to some of the internal processes that are there in SRM to help simplify and save your time on those particular activities. Like, hey, can you generate a list of questions we should be asking a supplier that is a high risk category? That is something that Gen AI can help answer. All right. Any other interesting question that anyone found? I think there are a lot of questions on, what we should be doing on contracting, or what, in general, what is it that we can do to build your data protection and privacy safeguards. So I would just like to take a stab at all of those questions, trying to answer all of them together. One thing is that procurement is sort of the train that drives, supplier integration, right? So you want to make sure that you're working with data privacy and InfoSec and your compliance teams to be able to, sit down and answer the questions that are right for the enterprises. So at this point of time, I won't be able to tell you specific questions that you should ask within, for Gen AI suppliers, because it varies a lot according to the supplier or the type of supplier you work with. If you work with BPO provider who's integrating Gen AI, then it just changes the ball game. You don't have to be so worried about your indemnity clauses, for instance. But if you're working with a completely new startup, then you need to be a little more cautious when it comes to your indemnity or your risk protection clauses and so on and so forth. So just make sure that based on the category of suppliers that you're working with, you integrate all the teams together and then get your contracting clauses framed according to the risk that the supplier offers. And that's where actually supplier risk really comes into the picture very strongly.
Yeah, great point. Both of those, thanks for taking those two questions. Those are both great points and themes. There are also a number of questions around how standards for ethics and security might be integrated. Some of these I think we'll probably follow up with you. We have other analysts on our team that are looking at these issues and can have a conversation. Some of them span outside of the procurement space function and should be enterprise-wide things that you're looking at and setting a policy around. Much better, in my experience, what I'm seeing, to lean into these things and talk about them than to say no Gen AI, no ChatGPT. That doesn't seem to be working for many. So appreciate the questions, and we'll do what we can to follow up, and we'll certainly send out that report to anyone who requests it as well. So thanks everyone for an hour of your time. Have an excellent day.